What's good, team? Right now, I'm bringing you guys another discussion topic today. Today's discussion topic is going to be Yu-Gi-Oh! Deck tiers explained, or pretty much deck tiers in general, no matter what card game you're playing. Explain, because I get a lot of questions of people asking me, Chris, what does a tier mean? What does tier mean? Is this deck tier 2? Is this deck tier 1? Etc. and etc. So it's going to be my purpose in this video to give you guys a breakdown of how tier lists work and card games in general. So without further ado, let's begin. Starting off by saying Happy Memorial Day, everyone. Hope all of you guys are having fun with your family. I know I did. Just came from the suburbs visiting my son and his mom. And now I just came back to give you guys your Monday discussion. You're probably going to be viewing this really late, but the show must go on for you guys, the fans. So starting off with deck tiers explained. I'm going to talk about tier 0 and what exactly tier 0 is. So tier 0 means God tier, meaning the deck is pretty much unbeatable. Tier 0 decks usually include FTK decks, OTK decks, and combo-oriented decks with 100% consistency, meaning no matter what kind of hand you draw with those decks, you're going to always, and I mean always, go off. Your combo's going to go off and you're going to win. So tier 0 decks, a great example of deck will be Dark Arm Dad deck back in 2008. Deck was pretty much undefeated back in the day. If you didn't play that deck, you weren't playing Yu-Gi-Oh! As a lot of pros will tell you from playing in that era. Unfortunately for me, I didn't play in that era. I was playing Naruto 60G at the time, but I do know about that deck. And the deck is really insane for the time it came out. Now, some people thought Pepe was tier 0. But the thing about Pepe, it wasn't tier 0, it was tier 1. The reason why it was tier 1, going into tier 1 now, is because it could be beaten by lower decks. So tier 0 decks in general is pretty much decks are, no matter what, they're on a god level, they're on their own playing field, no deck can touch it, they have a high consistency factor, and they're pretty much just unbeatable in the current format they're in. Now, like I was saying about tier 1 decks now, tier 1 decks are pretty much decks that are almost tier 0, they have a high consistency ratio, they have good combos, they can be anything from FTK, OTK, and etc. But the thing about tier 1 decks, they do have some kind of consistency issues. And with that being said, they can lose to tier 2 and tier 3 decks and so on and so forth. So pretty much the only difference between tier 1 and tier 0 is tier 1 can actually be beaten by lower tier decks, and tier 0 can't be beaten by nothing, not even tier 1. I mean, tier 1 probably can fight against it, but it can't beat it. It's just that simple. Now I just thought about it. Another great example of a tier 0 deck was Frog FTK back in the day. That deck was insane from what I've seen on YouTube. So, yeah, tier 1 and tier 0 are pretty much the same damn thing. Just tier 1 can be beaten by weaker decks. So what defines a tier 1 deck? Look at your format. Right now, tier 1 decks, Cosmos, Monarchs, Pepe, PK Fire, those are all tier 1 decks. They all are on top. They're almost at the tier 0 bracket, but they can be beaten by tier 0 decks here and there. I mean tier 2 decks and tier 3 decks here and there. Now, what makes a tier 2 deck? A tier 2 deck is pretty much a powerful deck that could be tier 1, but it's not as consistent. Great examples of that would be a deck like Masked Heroes, Dexbox, and etc. So essentially, pretty much tier 2 decks are last year's tier 1 decks, meaning that they can fight, but at the same damn time, we go to a big event on a tournament scale, whatever the current tier 1 deck is at the time, they may be able to creep in the top 32, maybe they creep in the top 16, maybe even win an event, but the consistency of the deck is not there to make it tier 1 or tier 0. The deck just don't have enough tops, they don't have enough wins, and using heroes as a prime example of this, if you take it to a big event, how many times do you brick out of one big event? If you're bricking 2 to 3 times out of a big event, that deck's usually a tier 2 deck. Now, if you brick once or twice out of a big event, that deck is a tier 1 deck. So, like I said, the only difference between the two, tier 2 is almost as good as tier 1. They just have consistency issues, and they're usually mainly those combo decks like Synchrons, Heroes, and etc. Now, what are tier 3 decks? This is the bottom of the totem pole. A tier 3 deck is pretty much the 1.1 trick ponies that are format, meaning these are your Cloud Ends, your Ice Barriers, and etc. Those are the decks that they have one trick and one trick only. They might be able to snatch a few games in, but ultimately they ain't winning shit. They're not even winning locals, and they might top a locals, but they won't win locals. These are usually your tier 1 decks from way back, maybe 2, 3, 6 formats ago. Examples of this would be Boojins. I guess I could say Black Wings, and etc. So one trick ponies, they're power. They were just decks that are completely power creeped out of the atmosphere, and they have a low consistency ratio, meaning based on the current format that you're in, the consistency on how fast the format is going to determine how good those decks can be. So understanding the tier list on Yu-Gi-Oh! Or any card game in general is you just got to take a look at if something's unbeatable no matter what you play, it's tier 0. If something is really good but can be beaten here and there, it's tier 1. And tier 2s are the decks that are almost as good as the tier 1 decks. They can win here and there, but they have consistency issues. Then tier 3 are the one-trick ponies. Now there are decks that fall in between those gaps. Like there's decks that are borderline tier 0, like tier 1.5. Well, I guess that'd be borderline tier 1, tier 2. But I guess I could say tier 0.5 or whatever. They're almost a tier 0 status, but they can still be slightly beaten. But that's kind of complicated, so I want to simplify the video. So just think of simple math. You're gonna have your decks that can fall in between the cracks, but for the most parts, I can honestly say tier 0 unbeaten, tier 1 can be beaten, tier 2 can win, but they lose more than they win usually, and tier 3 are just your one-trick ponies, etc., etc. Now, what do you guys thought about this topic? Let me know in the comment section down below. What kind of decks do you guys prefer to play? Do you guys prefer to play tier 3, tier 2, tier 1, etc.? I mean, at the end of the day, it doesn't matter. We all love this game of Yu-Gi-Oh! If you're playing competitively, I prefer you guys to play tier 1, tier 0, or tier 2 if you really want to win. So, like I always tell you guys, I do these videos. I truly believe in helping you guys become better players. And also do these videos. I truly believe in you guys helping me become a better player. I upload 3 times a week. On Mondays I do my general discussions. On Wednesdays I do my top 10s. And on Fridays I do my explains. Thursdays I explain decks and archetypes in detail. And if you guys have a question or a video you want me to discuss, I'm always open to topics. So post those also in the comment section down below. So as I always tell you guys, this is Chris from Team Innovation, and I am signing out. Peace, guys, and stay innovative. Deuces. Machine type monster you control. Now that part is very important because he counts himself and he counts every other machine on the field. If 2 or more machine type monsters are special at the same time while the card in your graveyard